There was a time where we would get eviction letters every month. We got eviction letters to the point that we were not moved by the first letter.
The two eviction letters that will come.
Normally receive two letters. The first one would know that it's the warning one. Then the second one, then we are like,
cause this is our love story. This is our journey. This is our love story. This is our journey.
What has been the hardest thing you two have had to face in your marriage, and how did you get through it?
yes.
You want me to go first? There was a point in our lives where it was really difficult, financial-wise, just the status at that time. We were living on one salary, and we already had 2 kids at that time. So yeah. And we even had to move to a different place where even right now when we think about it, we're like, oh my goodness, like we were on the ends, we're like of our lives. But yeah, and then the second one would be the miscarriages. So we had 2 miscarriages after having our 2 girls. So when we had our 2 girls, actually our 2 girls, it's a conversation that we had before we had children, that how many children do you want? I mean, it's something that comes up, for people who are courting, people who are just starting out in marriage. So we had that conversation. We wanted 2 children. We were happy with 2 children. And yes, our dream and our prayer was that we would have a boy and a girl. Yes. So 2 kids came, and it was both girls. It was both girls, and we had to talk about it again.
Funny enough, when you talk about struggles, the biggest struggles in marriage, I don't have any.
Are you serious?
I'm telling you. I think it goes back to my coping mechanisms. I'm a very flexible guy. Hey, stress angistandi, man. It's stress. I don't stress, man. In my world, there's no stress. If something doesn't work for me, I find a way, I maneuver. If I don't afford financially, I find a way, I'm okay. Yeah. We're going to fix the car till it... I think, the times where we're still starting out, I was having fun. Yo. Yeah, I was having fun. I was there for my kids. I was there for her. I made sure I enjoy every moment.
Yeah, that I can always remember that you made moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the time we couldn't afford, as we are talking about our financial situation. There was a time where we would get eviction letters every month. We got eviction letters to the point that we were not moved by the first letter.
The 2 eviction letters that will come.
Normally receive 2 letters. The first one would know that it's the warning one. Then the second one, then we are like, what we gonna do? I remember Wayo and Oayo and Olubanzi. All of our kids have got O names. There's Oayo, the firstborn, secondborn, Olubanzi, thirdborn, Onovuyo. So we had Oayo and Olubanzi. Sometimes they'd be chased from preschool, but they'd come back home and would play. So our life entirely, I think you asked me off record, you asked me, how do you cope with everything? Running the practice, the events, also running a church. Our life is about playing. We play. At home, I'm not a pastor. At home, I'm not a therapist. At home, I'm a buddy, and I'm just about the fun. I think that's what makes the life worthwhile. I'm just playing every time. I don't want to be serious.
So what we didn't say is that we fell and had sex before marriage, and then when we started our premarital counseling, we were told, stop, right? And then we kept ourselves, and by the grace of God, we were accountable to the pastors that were giving us premarital counseling. But in my mind, I am like,
Was that process?
6 months. 6 months.
Yeah.
Yes. We were, we're just going to do a proper premarital counseling, go through the process and stuff. In my mind, I'm like, when we get married, and I think it's because I'm so much into sexual health, in my mind, I'm like, it's just gonna be sex, day in, like in the morning, during the lunch time, during during the evening.
Her career is very time consuming, right? So I think it's just that thing of get the spell where it's like, I miss you, and then because I can be childish like that sometimes, and then it can sometimes easily lead to just something else where it's just like, I'm just gonna choose not to be understanding. So
Just the ego.
I think so. I think it's that thing of, but so sometimes I just say, I'm just gonna be difficult just for the sake of, trying to just release some steam. But outside of that, I think like I said, we try to keep a healthy space, especially with the fights and arguments. Yeah.
I would say the same as well. I think there's definitely challenges we've navigated. I don't think there's one that would stick out like that, like, yo, that was the biggest thing we went through. But I think in all the challenges that come up here and there, I mean, being married, that's what being married is. Some of the things that maybe I've learned is that also there's seasons in relationships. I think that's the biggest thing that I could say that like really gets us through anything, really, is understanding that there's seasons. So it's not always going to be rosy. Sometimes won't be so rosy. You're not always going to feel like infatuated. But sometimes you will. Sometimes there's going to be that, oh my gosh, I look at you and I'm like, yes, baby. And then there's times where it's just like, okay, it's fine, But the one thing I love the most about the two of us is that we respect marriage.
Okay.
We respect marriage. We never have fights that really cross boundaries where, now we both kind of know how to just let something diffuse itself.
Did you guys get intense premarital counseling?
That's a funny thing, and I wanted to get into that now. The thing is, before marriage, you could say we had a toxic relationship, right?
Yeah, when we dated.
When we were dating and whatnot, it wasn't always like, So, but then the year before we got married, then we really got like intentional about working towards this goal. And I think it's in that same spirit that we've tried to, move on with that. So, for example, we don't have any outside influence.
Okay.
I think that's the first thing that makes it so much easier for us, is that we don't have any outside influence. So yes, I still have my friends and so on, but I don't go out anymore, right? I don't. If I'm gonna see my friends, I'll see them for paddle or for touch rugby, or we see them together, right? But if you're married, then we'll come together. So those things now we've taken really serious, because we've seen that in other relationships as well, that normally that's actually what causes the problems, you see. And then with the premarital counseling, I think we only did one session, and it was such an impromptu one.
Listen, you know what's funny now? I'll
COVID. It was COVID.
Yeah, but besides that, yes, I think it was because of COVID, and also we got married so quickly. Like we got married. I'm sure there's people who are like, she's definitely pregnant.
Yeah,
like
people thought she was pregnant.
Because he proposed, so it was lockdown. I was at my parents' house. He was at his parents' house because we had both moved back to Nelspruit. And so I think that was like the worst time in his life. Like, like I'm one of those people. I'm okay with like, space and stuff. Yeah, I continue with life. But he's like, I want you to be in my presence. I want to see you. I want to, So he had a really hard time with that. After lockdown, like regulations were relaxed. Then the nice thing is that he had also met my family. So he was coming to visit, like he'd come and visit and sit with my family in the house. Best time of our lives. I think that also really regulated our relationship a lot. Spending time together with my family, spending time together with his family, parents. We spent a lot of, I mean, it sounds boring, but we spent a lot of time together with our parents, like just chilling, having conversations. Yes.
That's what happens. Yes.
Everything.
Yeah, like just having random chats and stuff like that. Then he proposed to me in July, right? And
Is there lobola with your family?
So I think we had like a lobola type of. They had the negotiations. We
there was
had
no
the
expectation.
no. So what happened is they didn't. Her father didn't want lobola because it's not their culture, right? So he felt that if he were to take lobola, it will come from more of a selfish. But why am I accepting lobola now? Whereas it's not my culture. It means I just want to take the money, right? Then my family came from a thing of no, but we need to do something. So there was an agreement that took place where we sent a delegation. They had the meeting. It's just that now the
outcome.
negotiation came down to naught.
Oh.
yes. So we had basically like a Sakab trouble lunch. So we had lobola, like it was a lobola, but there was no exchange.
Yes.
So at the lobola negotiations,
Yeah, very lucky me. So that's what happened. So the negotiations just led to.
so even that was squashed in between. Hey, can I tell you, our parents, like once we got engaged, it was like, okay, yay, we breathed for July. And then end of July, we had the first meeting with our parents and they were like, okay, let's discuss dates. And I was thinking, I'm a planner, so I had always planned out in my life that I'd have a year to plan my wedding, you know, so year engagements and stuff. And the parents were like, excuse me, what? They were like, no, November. Literally, because
we got engaged in July.
yeah, but I think the first meeting with our family was end of July.
Yeah.
So now I'm like August, September, October, November. And then it was like, okay, that was like the first meeting. Then we had another meeting. Then came, we need to squash Sakab Probo in between all of this. I'm like, how are we going to put all of this? We've got like 1 month to plan this Sakab Probo lunch thing, lobola thing. Then after that, I must plan the white wedding. So it was a lot, but we sped it up. Yeah, we sped it up, and I mean, we got married in December, and that was great. But I think for us, so premarital counseling, the point was premarital counseling. It's like we kind of just didn't get the time for it. Everything happened so fast. But I think because we both grew up in church and both our parents are pastors, by default you kind of got that premarital counseling, because not only did you hear it in church, because you've been in church your whole life, so when they address things about marriage and about, you're always there. I've been to women's conferences, they address how women should be in marriage. He's been to men's conferences, they address men on how they should behave, and then you also see it in your home. So you've kind of just had it.
You know, Will and I, we've walked through infidelity, and it's like it's tough for me to speak about the person I used to be, because I feel like I'm not that person anymore. Even answering questions about that time, it's like a pain in my heart, you know, because there's so many things there that you feel like you're breaking the whole picture, you know. You're just like making bad choices, you're just doing wrong things, and we both had a part to play in it, you know. But I think what happened in the beginning, like I said before, it was very overwhelming. But I think for me, it was just like, I realized I can't keep this picture together, you know. Like, I was literally the one that I was trying to make everyone happy, and I was becoming more and more unhappy, because I'm trying to, you know, portray this like perfect picture, you know. And yes, it was hard, like I remember days where I fell into depression. I had 18 years of depression and struggling with it. And I remember days just dropping the kids. He would go to work and I'd drop the kids at school. I'd come back and I'd sleep the whole morning, and I just, you know, wish the day away, and then set my alarm to, you know, wake up so I can fetch them, come home, make a meal, and just do everything over again. Oh, maybe go to rehearsal. Then was a worship leader as well, and then on Sundays you stand up on stage and telling the whole church to come now, let's worship. But your life is falling apart, you know. And I think that for us, I think those realities were just tough in the beginning. And I also I wasn't quite sure of how to handle it.
Yeah.
And at that time as well, even just saying the word depression was like, whoa, don't say that.
Yeah.
You know, don't you have a relationship with God? Like, where's God in all of this? Why aren't you casting your burdens onto the Lord? And I remember that's what my head of department said to me at the time. He was like, well, you know, where's your faith? Where's your faith? And I was just like, man, I'm struggling, you know, and sleepless nights with 2 babies that are crying, and they didn't want him. You know, I was the one getting up every night, and I was sleep deprived. I was depressed. I picked up weight. Just everything just changes. It's just like it's a barrage of stuff that's just falling on you, and then he was away a lot, so I just felt like this picture is not the picture that I've always wanted. And I think that's the biggest shock. It's like you think it's going to be one thing, but then it turns out to be the complete opposite. Yeah. And I really struggled with that. And then went on a whole, you know, almost lifetime of going from one antidepressant to the next, and, you know, just being in the church as well, and you know, the performance, and it wrecked my nervous system. It just like everything, it was just a mess, you know. And so looking back on that, I'm just like, yo, I'm so grateful I'm not there anymore, you know. Thank God for what we've come through, and what God has been so gracious to establish in our lives, and even keep us together still. You know, for the sake of us, first of all, and the Lord, this testimony, and then even our children, for their benefit as well, you know, and not every story turns out like ours, you know, but it did for us, and I'm so deeply grateful for that. But I think the overwhelming thing there was just our this is too much.
I think the biggest mistake we ever do as people is to treat marriage as an extension of dating. And we don't realize that there are different dynamics altogether. When you guys are dating and living separately, you guys have separate bank accounts, separate whatever. When you are now married, it's no longer a my thing, you do you, I do me type of thing. We do this thing together, right? So her burdens become my burdens. And those are the things at play that then disturbs this flow that you were thinking it's going to be there.
I think, as you're saying, there's just so much going on. And I think we also didn't take time to say, hey, where are you? You know, how are you feeling? Because a lot has happened, honestly. You know, parenting on its own is demanding. And ever since we met, we've been studying. You know, at some point, either you are studying a course, or as soon as you're done, I'm studying a course. But there's always been that, and there's never been a time where we knew each other outside of school, outside of that. So I think last year when I moved to PE, our marriage was, it was strained to a certain extent. And
it was rough. And you then realize, I think, number one, the importance of foundations.
Yeah.
Foundation is quite important, because it's not that challenges are not going to come. They are going to come. In fact, the Bible guarantees that.
Yeah.
You understand? I love the words that are spoken by in the Bible, spoken by Paul. He writes to Timothy. He says to Timothy, "Get here before winter," right? In one of his greetings, which means, number one, winter is coming. And it doesn't matter whether you pray or not, winter is coming. Yours is to ensure that you get here before winter, right? So I love those words, because they reveal the truth about life. So my wife and I were cruising nicely in the first couple of years, and then last year, wheels started coming off. But then what kept us, I would think, is number one, our foundation. I appreciated that she and I started dating when we were living far apart, away, because then we learned to be intimate with each other without being physically intimate, right? We learn to be vulnerable in terms of our conversations and talking and stuff like that. So when things started falling off, we then had to revert back to that. When she was away for a good 6 months. Of course, she would fly in and out of town and I would go see her and stuff like that. But that change in the space, was a huge change for me. Because the second she left, I lost my job. So now I'm unemployed. My wife is not around. My daughter is not around.
Yeah.
I'm in the house alone. Now I'm a man who lives in the house alone. I'm like, okay, I need to find a job. My wife is at school. My daughter is away. There's so much that needs to happen. So.
And I think also before I left, prior to me leaving, I was also in a very tough space because ever since I met him, I always tell him that, I started working when I was 16, I would work for my parents. So ever since I've known myself, as a teenager to being an adult, I've always been that person who's been working, who's very much independent. At some point, I think that was an issue in our marriage because my husband felt like, yes, you are so independent, but there's no room for me to also contribute in your life.
Can I buy you a time? Please, something.
Can I be needed?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think also because at the beginning of the year, my business wasn't doing so well. Also at the same time, I chose a career that is also very confusing and so I'm also waiting.
Just for context.
Okay, so I studied psychology. So I was at a point where I knew that I wanted to study psychometry, but also I know how competitive it is. And I'm also very anxious. I'm like, will they accept me this year? People will wait for years before they get in. So there's also that my business is not doing well. It's kind of changing how I see myself. Because now I'm like, who is this person? As much as my husband is not the type of person who would wait for me to ask for money, but the fact that this money is coming into my account, I'm like, what is this, I think that was, it was very tough navigating that. And also, as soon as I left, I'm leaving, but I know that I'm leaving my husband unemployed, so I'm like, is he gonna cope? Because knowing him, I know that it's gonna be better if I'm there, so I'm like, I'm pursuing a new career that is also very much demanding in terms of financially, because now I'm moving to a place we need to pay rent. I have to drive myself to work every day. So it's just all of these things. Then we have a house back in Pretoria where he has to stay. We also have a child. So all of these things, I think, it just came to a point where everything just exploded, And also, again, I think you were just completing your master's. So I'm like, okay, at least if you were still doing your master's, I know there's something that would keep you occupied. But now I'm like,
So it was just that tough thing. To answer your question, it was a lot of conversing that helped us to navigate that path. My wife and I are comfortable in having uncomfortable conversations. Very much comfortable in that, and we normalized that. Like she said, she did psychology, so she's that thing of saying, "Tell me your feelings. How do you feel about your behavior? How do you feel about being broke?"
It's going to be my next question, and we're getting into the segment of It Gets Real. I'm glad you mentioned the unemployment part. As a man, I know a lot of your identity comes in your career and how you show up. And I'm not sure about your circumstances regarding savings, but how did that affect you in the way that you show up as a husband when you had no more income, now you have this household and you don't know what's next?
Jeez, it was tough. But then I thank God for my wife, because I think she is always, because of her upbringing, that she was very much independent, quite self-sufficient, this, that, and the other. So I almost get the sense that the financial muscle is not much of a thing to her. Okay. So there is more to me when she sees me than just a guy that provides financially. And I think she has learned to appreciate other forms of leadership other than financial leadership. So that's number one. But to be honest with you, it really hit me hard, because as a man, I come from a background where my father was taking care of us, taking care of my mom was not working, and my father would do everything, and my father took pride in that, right? So my biggest issue is that if for some reason now I lose the ability to take care of my family, then it's more of a question on my masculinity, to say, I grew up in a home where my father took pride in providing. Right, and so the identity, what makes you a man, part of that, a larger part of it, is provision. In fact, I normally say that men are measured in 3 Ps: provision, protection, and performance, right? To say, number 1, you need to provide. Number 2, you need to protect your family. And then performance, it's something else that we can talk about some other time. It's something that gets me into trouble, right? But the fact that my ability to provide for my family was not questioned by anybody else, but by me, you know? That made me question my masculinity, you know? So it put me in a space, but of course, my wife made sure the conversation is such that I don't feel that space, I don't feel useless. And, you know, there's nothing as beautiful as, you know, when you find yourself in the space as a man and you've got a supportive wife that speaks high of you in your lowest. Right, so she learned that art of speaking high of me even when I was low, right? And reminding me of the vision, reminding me of God's provision. And the nicer thing is that we went through things, you know, in our marriage. At some point, I lost my job again. Like I've lost my job 3 times in this marriage. For some reason, I just joined the wrong sectors, you know. And then she would remind me of the testimonies. The Bible says they defeated the enemy by the word of their testimony and the blood of the Lamb. There's power in testimony. She would remind me of the time remember that time when you didn't have a job and God made a way, Remember that time where you've never been unemployed for this much. You understand? You are smart, you are educated, this, that, and the other. So that helped, right? And I think if that was not there, I was going to sink into a deep hole.
If I had to choose, I would choose the same thing, because it's like that was, and like you look back and it's all God. Like you can't plan a life this grace, full of grace. You can't. It's just the Lord. It's just Him that carries you. And you know, in those times in my life, this was my altar, this little piano, you know. I got this when I was 13 years old. Sure. And it's been with me ever since. And I would come here and I would work through the pain and the struggle and the loneliness and the confusion and the being overwhelmed, the anxiety, you know, the depression. I would just sit here, and a lot of my songs have come from those places, you know. But God always had a plan, and I think that is just the beauty of the Lord, is that when you cling to Him, He will fight for you. He fights your battles for you, and He makes that path straight, you know.
When you think of how you were feeling there, did you feel the overwhelm, or did you feel like you're just losing your wife? Like, what is happening in your world, or you're just hell-bent on, at least I'm providing?
I think there was definitely a sense of, let me just stick to the things that I'm expected to do. And that's tough, because depending on who you talk to, they have different opinions on what that looks like. But there came a time where also it was an escape. You know, it was much easier for me to go out and do the things that I needed to do, and then psych yourself up to come back home, because you realize that, you know, that place of peace and that place of tranquility, with everything that was going on, you know, that gradually got less and less and less. So I think, you know, to answer the question around how messy things get, when it's just you looking out for yourself, it's a very different thing. So when circumstances and when your home environment gets you to the place where you feel like that's justified, it's a dangerous place, because now I'm starting to look for what I think I need that I can't get at home. I'm starting to look for it elsewhere. But I think for us, our family, and the way that all of those things kind of like unraveled, it needed to unravel.
Yeah.
And I think God is a God that is an expert at putting things back
Don't
together.
look at me, because you're gonna cry.
It's as hard as the terrible things are that we had to come through, we're so deeply grateful for it, because of what it's revealed, and for what it's allowed for us to be able to accept and embrace and grow. And I think, people don't realize how difficult change is.
Yeah.
Change is extremely difficult.
It's huge.
And for us, you know, in spite of the stuff that didn't fit the box, the things that we did that we kind of like had to figure out as we go, the biggest thing is that God's always been there. And, you know, you feel at your lowest and you're most alone and most abandoned. But when you step back from that,
You see his hand.
it takes time to help you with that perspective. But usually when you look back at that time, you realize that God was there all along.
I've been feeling this way since we hooked up. I ain't walking away no matter what. Tell me what you're fighting for, and I will fight with you. Cause this is our love story. This is our journey.